Alright, so welcome to ODIN's interest meeting. We're going to get a little bit into talking about the real value of education, but we have some new people with us here. So let's just go around and introduce ourselves really quickly. Just a little bit about your, name, year, major, all that.
My name's May, and I'm a sophomore in neuroscience.
Cool.
Cool, yeah.
My name's Jared. I'm a junior in packaging systems.
My name is Gurinder. I'm a sophomore, majoring in finance.
I'm Casey. I'm a national security and Spanish major.
Sweet. So we're just going to dive into it. So the first thing that I wanted to talk about was how much I see a lot of people affected by student debt. And I know a lot of people taking out loans for college. And is that worth it? Are some majors more worth it than others? What are you guys thinking?
I mean, if you come out with a major in psychology, there's not too many avenues to go down. So I think it is really dependent on, how specific your major is and how applicable it is to.
Yeah, like psychology, you really gotta get a PhD.
You'll probably just become a psychology professor. There's not too many avenues.
Yeah, you definitely need some sort of grad school for any psychology-related major, because I'm cognitive neuroscience, and I'm realizing now as a sophomore that there's not really much I can do with just an undergraduate degree in cognitive neuroscience.
Mm-hmm. And with regards to taking out debts to go to college, I feel like a bachelor's degree has become the bare minimum to get any good job. So if you can't afford to go to college, you don't really have another choice but to take out the loan. And it'll definitely follow you afterwards, after graduating for a bit, but I don't see how you have any hopes of advancing your career if you don't have that bare minimum.
Yeah, I think it might be different for different fields, but I've been really surprised with looking at job applications. Most of the job applications that I'm looking into, they're all database management, coding, stuff like that. And most of them say a bachelor's degree in some quantitative field or 4 to 5 years of experience managing a database. And I look at that and I'm like, shit, I could have been making money for 5 years.
Yeah. Remind us of your major again, Eric.
Oh, I'm in physics.
Yep.
Yeah.
To elaborate on the reason why I chose national security and foreign affairs and Russian, for people who have known what they wanted to do, like me, and who specifically have wanted to work for the government jobs need specific majors. So some people might look down on poli-sci and international studies and national security because it's a liberal arts major and the STEM majors are just valued more. But if you know what position you want and you know that that position requires this major, I think it's beneficial to go into it.
Yeah.
But I think it's kind of insane, the idea that as an 18-year-old, that we're supposed to understand what we want to do for the rest of our lives, when there's so much that we have literally zero exposure to. And I think it's a real problem that people, it's basically random chance that you're, maybe a bit of a humanities person, you enjoyed this one class in high school, and then you end up taking on a huge amount of debt for a major that you don't necessarily understand, and then you're stuck without a lot of job options. So I don't know, it's rough.
Yeah, especially for science majors, because of how competitive science entry-level jobs are, I guess you could say, there's really you take out, you're so in debt for your undergrad, and then you get out of your undergrad, you graduate, and then you finally get to the point where you're like, okay, I'm finally done, but you haven't even started. Your graduate degree is more debt and more stress and more everything. And even a master's with a science degree isn't really it doesn't really differentiate you from any other person with a science graduate degree. You have to set yourself apart from everyone, because nowadays there's so many people that want to go into science majors. And it sucks because I know I'm going to have to end up going and doing grad school, and I'm going to be in debt for such a long time just because of what major I chose.
So, I think the reason that I'm more concerned about people taking out loans nowadays is that I've just noticed the massive inflation in tuition over the last decade or so. And I think it's related to something else that I want to talk about later, about how there's been more bureaucracy in the universities. They're not just really run by professors anymore. But yeah, tuition has been outpacing inflation like crazy, and so the real price of it is going up, and up.
And also, if you think of like the alternatives of what you could do with your tuition money, is if someone puts, let's say, $50,000 towards school, they could also take that $50,000 and start a business, or get equipment that they could practice coding or different things in the technology field, which I feel like you probably don't need a degree for, because let's say like SpaceX or something, if they're trying to get a rocket to a certain location, they don't care if you have a college degree, but if you can do the task at hand, that's all they want. So I feel like it's just like an allocation of like resources and where you want to put everything.
Yeah, and there was like definitely a time where, going to a university and getting your bachelor's degree, like that wasn't something that every single person did. It was more of like the higher up, the elite. But now, education, higher education specifically, is a lot more accessible to people, which is a really good thing. But then kind of like what you were saying, like there are other things you can do with that money. And just because you do have the option for it doesn't mean you necessarily have to take it, because now like there's a lot of jobs in America that are like completely neglected because people feel like they have to go the higher education route when there's so much like vocational work they could be doing instead.
Yeah, plumbers have been making bank because there's like no
Mechanics,
plumbers.
auto mechanics make so much money.
Yeah.
And there's like a huge decrease in the vocational trades. Like a lot of people could be going to the trade schools where there's a high demand, because no one wants to be plumbers or these jobs that take a lot of manual labor. But yeah.
I think trade schools are definitely like an underappreciated option.
Yeah, for sure.
I know just a friend from my hometown. We all went off to college, and we got in debt, like $100,000 worth of debt, and he got underwater welding like certification in like a year, and made 6 figures like straight out of that. And he loves what he does too.
Underwater welding.
That's pretty hype.
Sick.
Where can I sign up for that?
I think it's not even with the vocations. It's even with modern, more technological skills, particularly coding. There are so many resources to learn a lot of these skills. Code Academy that are the actual skills that our employers are looking for. Eric, what you were saying about being able to run a database, being able to code, all those things are things that you can pick up from a textbook or an online course for a couple $100 compared to 4 years getting a degree. And I really think that this might be what breaks the bubble of education, is people realizing that there are alternative routes to achieve, and not just trade schools, but for a lot of the technical things, coding in particular, that there are alternative routes. And I think people are going to start taking those more, realizing that they don't need to pay, hundreds of thousands of dollars in order to essentially be tested. Because that's a lot of what school is you learn the material on your own. And there are resources out there for you to learn that material. You're paying for being tested, and you're paying for, I guess, the motivation that comes with that. But as people find it elsewhere, I think things might change.
Yeah, I think if you're majoring in computer science, or you want to do programming as a career, then there's like this really great online website. It's called Udacity.com, and it's taught by people who are actually like working for Google or for Uber, and it's their day job. Whatever they're like teaching, the courses that they're teaching, that's what they do in like their everyday life. Whereas like if you go to college, like those professors, they've been like teaching the same thing over and over again, and who knows like if they have any practical experience or not. You know, their day job for professors is to teach, but whereas like on Udacity, the day job of the instructors who are teaching is like that's what they actually do.
It's actually
So-
applying it.
Yeah.
So I feel that a lot with physics, that teacher angle, because as a physics student, we're expected to go straight from our undergraduate degree to a PhD, to doing some research work, and then becoming a professor. So pretty much all our professors are teaching us are how to become professors. They don't teach us how to do anything in the real world.
I think there's this huge disconnect in the academic world from the real world. Eric, you and I were speaking about this, how insulated the academic world can become, because professors are people who have gone that course, who have been in, you know, K-12, then in universities for their entire life. And I think there's a significant disconnect from the sorts of skills, traits, abilities that people need to be learning in order to function in the modern world, from a lot of what we end up being taught in the university.
I think Casey can relate because she's also national security, but most of our major is like theory and textbooks and just learning about current events and politics that people can honestly do on their own time and do this anyway, but the government jobs that we want still need these degrees for the employees they hire. So it's like I could have done this without the degree, but
Yeah, and I think that's part of the reason why academia is able to become so insulated from the outside world, especially if it's jobs connected to the government, because neither the government nor academia really have any type of profit motive, which kind of profit motive can mess up a lot of incentives for sure, but what it does is it grounds you to reality. So like you can have government agencies that require a certain degree, and they just have that requirement year after year because it's what they always had, and they're not actually checking in with the universities to see, are you teaching these students what we need them to do, you know?
Yeah. And the tuition inflation comment that you mentioned in the beginning, it reminded me of how our parents always go, you know, back in my day, I held a part-time job and paid my way through college, and then I graduated and bought a house and had 3 kids. And now, we can't really
Psych.
do that.
Psych.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we've been voicing some of the frustrations about certain majors being fairly incompatible with the sort of working world outside of academia. I think one thing that's important for us to acknowledge is that something like, there's a couple of us here who are physicists or studying physics. Something like physics, you know, is self-contained by nature. So I guess I gotta stop myself and say, like, yeah, I mean, if I'm learning physics, I'm gonna be learning physics, and there are limitations upon that. I regret nothing, by the way. I love physics. But I think what can be really important is in high school giving kids more information about what different careers are, giving kids more skills to explore different paths earlier on.
Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
And I feel like there's been a huge push that everybody needs to go to college. And that sounds really nice. Like, that's a really nice thing to say. But I don't think it's necessarily true. And it also just inflates the cost. If you...
Yeah, and the, like, supply of people with college degrees.
Yep. Yeah,
While we're
so it
mentioning-
makes college degrees less valuable while making them more expensive.
While we're mentioning high school, I'd like to point out that this isn't just a trend that's like happening with college. Like in high school, people used to learn shop. They used to learn like how to bake and all that kind of stuff. And now it's just, yeah, home ec. I didn't remember that name. But now it's just like you do your math, you do your English, you do your basic like necessities of what like, and it comes from the way they measure progress in the system. They measure it all through the metrics of these certain tests. and all most schools care about is like getting their kids to have good grades on those tests.
And I know they're defunding a lot of like music and arts programs, and I know a lot of kids, they probably feel trapped, and they probably go into, they get in trouble or when they don't feel like they have a path, when they can't really, they're not scoring well on these tests. It's just paper and pen, and they're not good at math, but they might be amazing at something else. But if they don't have that platform to like practice that and figure out what that is, then they just feel like disenfranchised, and they just might go down a path that, isn't meant for them.
Yeah, I don't like the idea of high school, like a high school degree and a college degree being about the same value, and just like how difficult it is to get a college degree versus a high school degree is they're inching towards each other, and that's really scary because we don't pay for high school. I mean, if you went to a public school, I mean, you expect everything to be provided for you and everything, and when you get to college, you see how much money is going into what you're doing, and you realize, like, am I really getting value for my money compared to high school where I didn't pay anything and things were kind of given to me and everything, and now here it's like they expect me to do these requirements and do all of this, but am I really qualified to work in the real world?
We've been talking about college as if it's only for either going into more academia or getting a job right out of college, but do you guys think there might be a different kind of value that comes from college?
The college experience.
What is the college experience?
Alcohol.
Honestly, though, like, not even kidding, I think that the reason why college costs so much is because it's now a cultural phenomenon. It's it's a sort of an intermediary period between childhood and adulthood, and that's why it's so.
It's an extension of adolescence.
Yeah, that's why it's an extension, but it's also sort of like having your hand held as you go off into having to be independent, having to be on your own. Like, yeah, we do, like, there is a lot of drinking and partying and things like that, but there's also VT Rescue, and all these resources to help people transition into adulthood. And I think that's why it's all well and good to talk about, in terms of job requirements, going to college might not be the best thing. But if I had kids, I'd be really hard pressed to, in a sense, deprive them of what is becoming our normal transition into adulthood.
Yeah, used to we like when we were tribes and that kind of back in the old days kind
Good
of stuff.
old days.
Yeah, we had like coming of age ceremonies where like you did this ceremony, you were a kid before, and now you're a man or you're a woman, and that's when you knew you like had to grow up and like start taking on responsibility. And I'm pretty sure like for U.S. at least that college is that ceremony for us now.
Mm-hmm. So are we paying $100,000 to learn how to become independent?
No,
And,
we're
like,
getting
take
the
care of
government to
ourselves?
do it, and then we're paying it back later.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
And this is probably this is kind of like a harsh truth, I guess. Part of the reason that I think the tuition has inflated so much is that we started subsidizing it with 0% interest. So that's great for people who are hardworking, want to go into a field that we need in our society, somebody we need for our society to make our society better. But what it does is it also allows people to just major in something that might be completely unrelated to reality, and the government will foot the bill. And if that happens enough, that drives up the cost for everybody else. So it actually, sometimes it really irritates me seeing people who don't take college seriously at all. They see it as just solely an experience. And then I see like some people who came all the way to Virginia Tech from India to work their ass off, and they're paying way too much because that other person is here to have their fun. And that irritates me.
I think being an immigrant helps in this case too, because we always have that pressure on our shoulders about our parents and what they experienced to come here. But I agree that it's weird when I see American kids who have been here for generations who just came to college to, have a good time.
I think another cool thing about college is like the whole network that you can build. Like my freshman year, I met a kid who was from India, and his father was like the prime minister to South Africa. And I would never meet someone like that if I just stayed in my hometown. So I think like a huge benefit of college that may be worth the money is the network that you can build and the people you can meet from all across the world, like you were saying.
Yeah, I think that's actually, to me, that would be like a worthwhile part of the college experience. Getting to meet new people who I wouldn't have met back in Fairfax or anywhere for some
And I honestly think that's why certain colleges are they cost more than other colleges, is because it brings people, like if you go to a really expensive college or a really renowned college like MIT, you're only going to get those people who are like literally geniuses, or they come from a really rich family. So that network for you is just going to that's going to move you up the ladder so much. Whereas if you go to like a community college, you'll get like near the same level of education, but your network will not be anywhere close.
Yeah, I think that's what people need to realize who are in college right now. Like, if you're in college for education, I mean, that's great. Like, you could get the same quality of education by buying textbooks and, like, studying on your own without going to college. So, for me, at least, I had this realization last year where, like, the real value of college comes from, like, the networks that you're going to build. It's not the education, because you could get the same quality of education without going to college. And so, yeah, so that's what, like, a lot of people need to realize. Like, they need to go out there and meet as many people as possible over their 4 years and, like, grow their network. So,
Yeah, and to me, another really positive thing about college, and especially Virginia Tech, is just the resources that are given to us as students to go out and do our own thing. Like Max, if you take some safety courses, or if you already took them, if I take them, I can go into the wood shop with you and learn how to build some stuff with giant wood making machinery that I would not afford on my own, and we have Virginia Tech helped us purchase a lot of this equipment to record ourselves right now. It gives us a lot of resources, but
we're
what
paying
frustrates
a lot
me
for those resources.
yeah
That's one thing.
and also like online classes, like I'm always a huge proponent. Look up lynda.com. We have that for free if you're a tech student, and it's awesome.
And the Microsoft package suites.
Yep.
And all this free software.
Yeah, and Overleaf if you need to write in LaTeX for anything.
The thing is, big asterisks on all this, because we say free.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
from our tuition. It's what you're
Yeah,
paying
yeah.
for. So, that's the other side of it. I can't remember who, but somebody asked, what are the other values of college? And I think one of the original values behind particularly liberal arts education and humanities-based education was the idea that maybe it's not you're developing a technical skill, but they're designed to make you think, make you be able to question the world, and make you better be able to operate within it and develop as an individual and as really a capable thinker.
Yeah.
And I think that is really important, and that's really valuable. However, I don't know necessarily that we do the best job of that in university. And going back to it being a cultural sort of period, I think the focus needs to be more on those sorts of things.
Yeah, and I think there is really great value in a liberal arts education, and I think we used to do this better in the past. Especially, to me, one of the main reasons that I went into physics is because I felt like every English class that I took in high school, I could fake an A. I don't know if you guys felt like that, but I could fake an A in any English class in high school. So it wasn't actually making me think. I don't know, maybe something has changed. I feel like liberal arts educations used to be more rigorous in the past, whereas now maybe they're afraid to hurt your feelings of your own thoughts or something, but I feel like I could kind of fake my way through a lot of those classes.
I've thought about that, the decline of how hard liberal arts are over time, and I think a lot of it comes from what I was talking about before, how everyone measures things in metrics that we can like easily define and stuff now.
Yeah.
It's so easy to define STEM fields as metrics. Like,
Yep.
you know this equation, you can apply it to these things, but you can't really do that, or you can't do it as easily in liberal arts fields.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so maybe that might be why.
But that shouldn't be the only way we measure progress, though, through like some metrics.
Yeah, exactly. Because I didn't think I remember just thinking, oh, English is easy until I picked up Nietzsche or something like that, and I was like, oh, reading is hard. I just never knew it.
Or writing 20-page single-space papers.
Yeah.
3 times a semester.
Yeah, and that's something I'm actually really kind of pissed off that I didn't get in my physics education. I didn't write throughout college. I wrote code. I barely write.
Writing is all we do.
Yeah.
Read and write. Reading is my
Absolutely.
homework. Writing is my grade.
Yeah.
One of the things I'd really like to do is have an honest comparison between the level of academic rigor 50 years ago or 30 years ago and today, because I sometimes think about in my classes, turning in an assignment and getting a B and be like, really? I should not have gotten a B on that. Or I feel like in general, it feels like B-level work, you can sort of slide by and get B-level work a lot of the time, and A might be a lot more of a challenge. But compared to, it used to be a C was average, and now really Bs are closer to average today. So on the one hand, I wonder, have the standards just dropped a lot? And that's always the mindset I had until I hung out with a friend's dad and his old college buddies. And then they told us stories about college. And they went to a good university and basically explained to us that they just fucked around the entire time. And
4 years?
Yeah, for 4 years. And we're doing shit that we would never get away with today. And did crap work and still got, B's, sometimes A's and things like that. So I don't know that the standards have dropped that much. I think our parents might have just been fuck ups too. But they don't want to tell us that.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just to me, at the end of high school, all of my teachers were like, you can't pull this shit in college. I'm getting you ready for college. And then I got to college and I was like, what? Ready? This is chiller.
Yeah. It's like when they would be like, your professor is not going to accept this. You have to do this format. You have to write it with these words, and you have to follow these guidelines. Yeah. And now our professor emails us back with, okay, thanks, spelled THX.
Yep, exactly. I was like, my professor has 3 research papers to write. He doesn't care what I turn in.
Yeah.
The professors don't even care about the format. They're like, oh, you can just choose which one you like the best. They'll give a recommendation, but all the stresses that teachers would put on very rigid guidelines are just
my high school
not
teachers
here.
always wanted really specific citation forms or something like that. And now physics, you literally just put a URL and
Yeah, I think it's just an American thing actually, because when I think about how my family's college experience was in Jordan, the standards are much, much, much higher, much higher. And I think, a lot of it's cultural, I'm sure, but it's kind of crazy to compare it to American higher education, because it's so competitive to even get into college there. If you have to bust your ass to get into college there. Getting into college there is expected, but still a privilege. You know what I'm saying? And I feel honestly, I didn't really do much in high school here. I don't know if I should even be here, honestly. And I thought it was really easy for me to get into college here. And over there in Jordan, you literally reserve your seat in a class. That's how they that's kind of how they set it up, is the lawyers and judges sons and daughters get priority, and that's obviously a cultural thing, but you have to reserve your seat based on either family status or how well you did in school.
I hate to say it, but I think they make it easy to get into college because they know they're going to make money off us.
Yeah.
And they know they're going to get their money back because the government guarantees the loans.
Yeah.
The other side of this that I wonder is that I think the standards don't have to be so high, because I don't know that you need to be. I don't know that college is providing us the technical skills necessary to live life. I think that a lot of, I mean, this is what we talked about at the very beginning of this. A lot of the actual skills you need for jobs, you either don't pick up in university, you pick up on the job, or you can find elsewhere. I think that in the past or in countries where college is a scarcity, yes, there's going to be this tremendous, tremendous pressure to perform really well because it is a scarcity. But when we live in an environment where it's not, then maybe standards drop because they can and because it doesn't matter if they do. And that's kind of, I don't know.
Scarcity makes things valuable.
May I completely agree about the cultural differences because, my grandparents went to college in the good old Soviet Union, and then my parents went to college in Uzbekistan, and everything was oral based. All their exams, all their important grades, assignments. I feel like here during written assignments, even if you don't know, you can somehow bullshit your way through it half the time. But when it's an oral exam, that's hard. That's like
you're gonna look stupid.
Yeah.
If you don't know what you're
Yeah,
talking
you have
about.
to know what you're doing if you're
Yeah.
doing that.
And my dad is one of the smartest people I know. And every time he talks about his college experience, I want to cry because it seemed like it was so hard. And he tells me himself, I have no idea how I got into college. I have no idea how I graduated. And I'm like, holy crap, I'm nothing compared to you. And I'm doing really well.
I wonder, I think about how like Virginia Tech, the physics department used to have, like they used to graduate like 8 students a year, and like 20 years ago. And, those students were probably really good because they took on physics. That's what they wanted to do. Nowadays, I wonder if you have 60 people taking physics, and it's still those 8 same people who are really good and really taking it seriously. And then everybody else, is picking up information along the way, is doing okay, but aren't held to those same standards because just the part of there's too much population trying to get these degrees that you just can't hold the same standards.
Well, it's been a little bit of a pessimistic night. Yeah. But yeah, we're getting a little late, so let's wrap this up because we have to get back to class tomorrow.
One of the things we like to do here on ODIN is explore actionable solutions for some of the problems we've discussed, some of the issues we've seen. We've gone a little bit all over the place, but if you guys have either a takeaway, something that maybe you thought about in a new light, or an idea that people might be able to implement into their lives, what would it be?
Yeah, one thing that I want to mention, especially for people who are younger, because I didn't start looking at jobs or thinking about what kind of job I would want to do until I was a senior, pretty much, because I thought I was going to go to grad school for a while and kind of changed my mind on that. But just go ahead and look at jobs and look at what's out there, and then try to match your education path to fit whatever job you could actually see yourself doing. And also, if you're in the more science side, coding, or actually, there's a lot of online courses for project management and non-coding professions and stuff like that. Check out lynda.com because we have it for free, and there's a lot of sweet stuff.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
So I would say that, like, at the end of the day, it all comes down to you. Don't expect anyone to take care of you at this point in your life. Like, all the financial decisions that you make, you are personally going to be responsible for that. So it's totally up to you. If you can, like, for me, I have a personal belief that if I can't afford something, then I can't. I'm not going to, like, take on credit. Like, for me, credit doesn't exist. It's all, like, cash. If I can't afford something, then I'm not going to get it. So far, I've been able to afford college education by, getting grants and paying my way through college. And if I had to take on student loans, then I would much rather drop out and work for 2 years, grind my ass off for 2 years, and then pay for college rather than taking the easier option of taking on student loans. And also there are tons of scholarships available out there that that people can apply to and get free money essentially. I know a girl, she's a senior at Virginia Tech, and she has founded this company called Dough for Degrees. And so she's literally she has earned over $200,000 in scholarships over the 4 years. So, yeah. Yeah, so so student loans isn't the only option out there. You know, there are tons of scholarships, and you could work your way through college. And if none of that works out, then, you know, you could drop out. That's always an option. And also when it comes to the living situation, you know, I've thought about getting or buying like a utility van, a GMC Savannah, like a 2-seater utility van, and just like living in the van. So, I mean, that's a lot cheaper than like paying for an apartment at Virginia Tech, you know, because like I'm paying at least like $750 every single month for an apartment. But if I was living in a van, then, you know, I would only be paying $100 a month
Parking fees.
So that's always an option, you know, like if you want to get creative, if you want to get smart.
That's a
then
college experience, right?
exactly, yeah. So I mean, it all comes down to you. Like, if you're serious about not getting into the student debt, then like you have to get creative. You have to find alternative solutions, like living in a van for 4 years.
I see your point, but I think one of those people that would rather take out a loan, because I have enough faith in myself to know that the job I get after college is going to be enough to get rid of my loans and then still make enough money. So yeah, but like you said, it is up to you, and it just depends on how much confidence you have and how willing you are to do what it takes.
Really quickly, that used to be better. That used to happen on a large scale better because you weren't guaranteed a loan. You actually had to convince somebody you were going to make the money back and pay it back to them.
Speaking of experiences, I'd say just take advantage of the experiences outside of classes that the college provides. Like Eric was saying earlier, like you can join a podcasting group. You can do research with your professors if you're in a STEM field. That's very important. You can, I don't know, go work in a wood shop, or you can do so many things. We have like over 500 clubs here at Virginia Tech, I think. Not, how many is it? More?
Something ridiculous.
Yeah, so there's like so many opportunities. You just gotta go out there and look for them.
I guess I'll say something. I think my takeaway was that I don't think you need, for example, a degree to set yourself out, like between you and your peers and you and like other people that are qualified for the same job, I guess you could say. I don't think you really necessarily need a college degree for that. And individuality does not necessarily come from what you've done in college necessarily. And like once you get out of college, they're going to look for really specific things, but they're also going to see what do you have that not everyone else has. And that's not necessarily academic.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So.
and with that, like, I would just say to never let a society that's literally, like, ridden with debt to make you feel like you're dumb or make you feel like you're lesser for not choosing what is now conventional route of going to college. Like, as we all talked about, there are literally so many other options out there that isn't going to a 4-year university and going all the way through it, so.
I think hopping off of that as well, specifically for people in the sciences, it's a really important realization to have that you do not need to get a PhD and become, you know, a physicist or a biologist or whatever to live a great life and do good things. I think it's really easy for people to get caught in that trap of academia, the trap of thinking you need to go further and further with academia. So I'd say my advice would be early on, separate yourself from that and realize, is that what I really want? Maybe, and that's wonderful, but realize that it's not the only way and that there are many other alternatives.
For more information on ODIN, check out our social media linked in the description below. If you'd like to attend a discussion, check us out on Facebook. We frequently update our events there. If you'd like to start a show or pitch a topic, send us an email at odinspeak@gmail.com. That's ODIN speak@gmail.com. Thanks for listening.